Welcome to trimming and aligning sentinel-hub data with the NRCAN 2015 dataset. This is my first time making a video like this, so please forgive everything. But yeah, we're going to get into it. Hopefully this helps guide you through. I'm going to start with just really quickly re-downloading some data from sentinel-hub. Make sure to put the cloud cover low, as low as you can. I usually do 10%. Because it's a pretty big extent, and so usually within it there's some good areas without cloud cover. So I'm just going to choose this extent here, and if I zoom in, you can see this is a pretty good area. There's no clouds. It's just some snow and water and probably different forests and some urban area, maybe some crop land. So we can just select all that. Going over to the bar here and choosing the little square. And then placing the vertex and just selecting the extent that we want. You may have done this already, but and there's other videos on it, but I just wanted to recap it real quick to go all the way through. So we download from this little image download here, choose analytical, because we want to download all the raws. And we don't need the true color, but I like to include it. It just is kind of nice to have to be able to look at what's actually going on with our eyes, because the bands can be kind of hard to interpret. So going into resolution, it's kind of up to you. Just make sure it's consistent. We used medium, but we'd also wanted to experiment with high, but we didn't get to it. You do want to choose for image type. Don't want JPEG. You want to change it to TIFF 32-bit. And the 32-bit gives the specific data that you need, the float type. If you don't choose that, you get integers instead. So now we have all the data we need. We can open up our blank new QGIS, or whatever GIS you are using. I'm using QGIS, and we import a new data type, import a raster, because both of these are rasters, so they're grids of cells or photos basically, but they have data other than color. So, except this one, which is the true color, which I'm going to use and import. I just like using the true color again because it's easiest to visually look at in terms of a map, and we can see I have the extent here. So now we want to pull up the NRCAN, which I'm just going to have to find in all these folders. You can see how big the project got, all the data sets. And we import it, and it's the whole big map. So all this, and that's pretty intensive to try and work with. So we just start immediately by clipping it. As you can see, my computer doesn't even want to load anymore since I'm recording. So we're going to move the extent from sentinel-hub on top of the NRCAN data set so we can look at it. And then we just start by doing our clip. The clip by the true color. Let's go to raster up in the top, and then extraction, clip by extent. Then you want to choose the extent as the true color, or whatever raw you've pulled in from sentinel-hub, but I like, as I said, true color. So now we have this clip layer, and you can see that it's not the right, it's not the same still. That's because it's the wrong projection. So we can go back up to raster at the top here, and then projection, warp. And so we've chosen our clipped extent here, and then we choose the WGS84 projection, because that's what sentinel-hub uses. But it's still the awkward skewed rectangle, so we want to clip it again, go up to raster, clip by extent, same as before, clip by the true color layer, run, and now we have a new layer that looks basically the same. Something I forgot to record earlier was in the overall project, if you go to properties, you want to make sure that the CRS, the projection for the whole project, is WGS84. And so you select that and you hit apply to make sure that that's the case. I did this earlier, but I just forgot to record it. So anyway, back to our extent here. If you zoom in, you can see that they aren't actually quite aligned yet because the resolutions are different. So the pixels aren't the same size. If you deselect the one on top, you can kind of see that if you were to think of it as a grid, the grids are very different sizes. So in order to align the resolutions, we need to know what the resolution is for the true color layer first by going into Properties, scrolling down until we find Dimensions. The X and Y here are what we need to remember. So in our case, it's 1250 and 1045. And we go to Save As, Export Save As for the clipped NRCAN layer and change rows and columns here to 1250 and 1045. We also want to save the layer as a file, or a geotiff in this case. You can see here I've already saved it previously. And you can save it as whatever you want, really. So now the resolutions should be the same. It's changed, how many pixels and everything. So let's see here. Yeah, you can kind of, it's a bit dark, but you can kind of see here. It's a lot closer. It's basically the same size. And if we deselect it again, those pixels, they line up pretty closely, and they'll line up close enough to align when we bring it into Python. They'll correspond to each other, and we'll be able to make a nice data frame out of it all. You can see we have our layer clipped and everything. A nice tip also before we leave QGIS here is if you go to the NRCAN layer we've now made, the clipped one, and go to Properties, you can go and make a histogram and just sort of get a preview of the classes that are in the scene before having to do any code at all. And so you can kind of see it here. So we can just zoom in here and take a closer look. There's a lot of certain classes, and there's none of other classes, and that just gives us a good idea ahead of time of what this extent has and the proportion. And hopefully this video was helpful in aligning, because it's fairly straightforward, but hard to explain in words, like written down. Thank you very much for watching.